A special meal without a napkin? Come, meet a VIP who just wants one thing. In Jesus' day, and in many world cultures today, you showed a guest affection and honour in the quality of your hospitality. Perhaps you've even seen it in your own home. When there's an honoured guest, the quantity and quality of food suddenly multiplies. And with that in mind, let's put ourselves in Martha's shoes. Jesus has turned up unannounced at her home in Bethany with a rowdy crowd of disciples. In her day, there was no way for guests to call ahead. But the social code dictated that when guests turned up, you fed them. The reputation of your whole village depended on it. And you also understood that one day in the future, you might in turn require the hospitality of your guests. But probably the thing at the front of Martha's mind was that this was no ordinary guest. Martha's surprise guest was Jesus. We find elsewhere that Martha was one of Jesus' bravest and most faithful followers. So perhaps you can imagine Martha thinking, I can't serve Jesus the equivalent of freezer leftovers. This is Jesus we're talking about. And so as Jesus and the disciples scatter around her home, Martha becomes a whirl of activity. There is so much to do, so many things to prepare. Now, Martha doesn't live alone. She lives with her sister Mary. So what's Mary doing as Martha works away? Is she laying the table or making beds or helping out in the kitchen? No. Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. Mary sits there, apparently barely moving. She's hanging on Jesus' words, clearly welcome among Jesus' male disciples, with no hint of this being awkward or inappropriate. Far from it. Jesus welcomes women and men who will listen to him. Yet as Mary sits, listening and attentive, things start to grate on Martha. Perhaps you can imagine Martha in the kitchen next door. She catches snippets of conversation through the walls. Occasionally, outbreaks of laughter waft through. At some point, everything starts getting too much. Martha is hot, she's tired, and she's flustered. And so resentful thoughts start bubbling away. While I'm standing here, slaving over a hot stove, what is my sister doing? Nothing but sitting, chatting, and contemplating. It's not just the kitchen pot that is in danger of boiling over, but Martha's temper too. Eventually, enough is enough. She bursts out of the kitchen and gives Jesus her thoughts. Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. It's remarkable. The very woman who became such a flurry of busyness out of her love and respect for Jesus now feels able to boss him around. Tell her to help me, she demands. The chances are we may have said very similar things to other people, even to Jesus, when we felt hard done by. But Jesus' response to Martha is kind and beautiful. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha asks Jesus if he cares. Of course he cares. He knows exactly how she's feeling. There's a series of concerns Martha feels worried by, and Jesus understands them all. But he also understands the dangers of her mindset. A good thing, wanting to offer Jesus hospitality, is in danger of becoming a bad thing. Why? Because it might eclipse the only thing of true importance. According to Jesus, only one thing is needed. This may be a play on words. At a basic level, Jesus might be saying that only one course is needed, not the elaborate feast Martha is whipping up. It's as if Jesus is saying, I don't want a starter, I don't want a napkin, I don't want after-dinner mince. I want you, Martha. Won't you sit down and be with us? The chance to be together is, after all, the best thing about sharing meals. Sometimes our desire to push the boat out is nothing more than pride. Jesus is encouraging Martha to keep things simple, to maximize her time with him. One Bible scholar notes that the food that Jesus is most commonly described eating in the Gospels is bread. Jesus would have preferred a simple sandwich lunch if it meant Martha could join in. But when Jesus speaks about one thing, there's a deeper reference too. Listen to how Jesus describes Mary's choice. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. What had Mary chosen? What was the one thing she needed? Quite simply, it was listening to Jesus. That is the priority. In her busyness, Martha had placed herself outside of the sphere of hearing from Jesus. And this not only made her anxious and resentful, but she missed the one thing that Jesus actually wanted from her. It's a warning to us as individuals and as impact groups together. Before we can impact our campuses, we must first allow ourselves to be impacted by Jesus' own word. Things we might imagine he'd want us to be busy with might actually prove to be far from his priority. We'll only know if we take time to listen. Jesus' words for Martha warn us not to become so busy working for him that we neglect spending time with him. Christian unions and churches that are characterized by this kind of incessant bustle soon become exhausting, unattractive communities. But when we take time to listen to Jesus, our hearts are won for him again. And we discover that he hasn't primarily come to take from us, but to give to us, supremely at the cross. And that can energize us to serve in a way that no social convention or law or sense of hype ever can. And then, as we step out in love, we'll show our campuses that the one true God doesn't so much want our busyness as he wants us.